Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon, and Cleveland, Ohio. We have over 700 books, over 25 employees, and we make about 40 new books every year. And we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to discuss some publishing news. I know, and I felt like last week we looked like we were a news desk with April Streeter over here. But
April, come help us.
April, we need you for our newscast. But if you haven't been following, Hachette Book Group purchased Workman Publishing in a completely shocking yet simultaneously unsurprising move. Because if you've been following this podcast for 5 minutes or 2 years, you probably know that consolidation is the name of the game in publishing these last 10 years.
So let's roll it back a second. So Hachette is
a conglomerate, has French ownership, German roots. It was formerly the Time Warner Book Group, but it had, when they are a multi-billion-dollar a year set of publishing houses that form a conglomerate that also offer distribution services.
They're one of the big five, right?
Yes. Well, that's the short way of putting it.
So they're the Borg. And then who's Workman?
Workman is one of the largest remaining independent publishers in the United States up until this week.
Wow. How old is it?
Workman is largest, not oldest, but also one of the larger ones to have remained independent. It is about 60.
Okay, wow. And how can you give us a sense of how big they are?
They are about $150 million a year on average.
That's pretty big, especially for an independent company.
Yeah, for an independent, that's huge. There are other independents that are that big, but not very many. Something like Chronicle Books would be like a peer for them, or
Houghton Mifflin until recently.
I'm sorry, I believe you mean Houghton Mifflin.
I never could pronounce it right, but now I'll never need to.
No, Houghton Mifflin is actually even bigger.
Oh.
But they are, and that's another one where you're like, are they independent? It's hard to, it's like, and then that draws the bigger, boring conversation of what is independence. But Workman was indisputably independent. It was founded by Peter Workman. It was owned by his wife, after his passing. And there's really no way of disputing its independence. They were not beholden to anybody.
And they had a ton of imprints like Timber Press and Story Press.
Those were companies they bought.
Oh, okay. So they were themselves buying companies, and then
I tell you.
The big fish ate the smaller fish. So
they...
ad infinitum.
They bought a piece of ownership in Familius. They bought, what's their literary imprint called?
I forget.
The one in Chapel Hill.
Oh, right. I know what you mean, but I don't remember the name.
Mm-hmm.
Algonquin?
Algonquin of Chapel Hill, yes. So they have 6 or 7 different imprints, I guess you would call them at this point, but who were once other smaller independent companies that they absorbed for one reason or another. And then so Timber did their gardening books, they did quite a bit of, they did really well with gift, they did really well with special sales. And the two things that Workman is known best for is strength of backlist, meaning they didn't publish a book and leave it for dead after a year. They published a book and they maintained it for years and years or decades and decades. and I guess the third thing actually they're known for, before I tell you the second thing they are known for, is what to expect when you're expecting, which was like sort of defined their ability to produce a shelf buster that was also a blockbuster. So like Peter's whole apparatus was publishing a book that made all other books in that category obsolete.
That's what shelf buster means.
And
Wow.
so
Sorry, other books.
and then so he famously would create books and then delay publication until he felt like the book was a shelf buster. So Workman was famous for announcing and delaying publications because, and it's like annoying, but hey, it's just kind of like an eye roll thing. It's not like Workman.
His long-suffering sales and marketing teams probably had some words about that.
Well, it seems like it mostly annoyed bookstore buyers who were like excited for a book and had customers ready for a book and had, planned their season around it.
So what's the second thing?
So, and then the second thing is like they were really good at category killing. So they would, really dominate, like we said, the gardening shelf. They would have so many books about gardening, and and they did that really well with lots of different things, and and they did that with like like micronutrient cookbooks and things like that too. They did lots of honestly really interesting stuff. They did that with herbalism books. They did that with Rosemary Gladstar is like a big name in their list. And and then they would take on new authors in that same vein, like Portland's own JJ Purcell, who did a number of books for them as well in the herbalism field.
She's working with us now.
But,
Also,
she'll probably go back to them as well. We're the smaller fish.
We're all lucky to have her.
Yeah. And, it's like the best author relationships are shared. And it is an interesting thing, all of this, because, Peter passed away in 2013. And, he was really one of these, the company sort of struggled to find a new Peter, because he was one of these personalities that was so focused and motivated and great at, creating the heart and soul of the company, that it was sort of inevitable that after that, and then these 8 years of not finding a suitable replacement, that, selling was what would happen. And that's a little troubling.
So what does it mean, I guess, for Workman and people who work with them, but also for the publishing industry, this merger?
A couple different things. So, mostly the most interesting detail that I have found is that Hachette does not have warehouse space for Workman. Like they literally don't have enough room, and which, tells you that Workman is a get. Workman has a lot of active books in their back catalog that are selling, and that's abnormal. That's really a rare thing. And so, they're going to maintain with their current operations probably for a while, even after consolidation and after the buyout goes through. And, it's kind of, so things will probably seem as normal, but, it's like the same thing that we've seen, with like Seal Press when they got absorbed by Hachette, or any number of other formerly independent publishers. It is likely that Workman will just be used for the edgier titles that would have fit into other existing lines or imprints.
Right.
But it'll feel kind of hollow because it won't have like sort of the like heart and soul and passion of Workman,
right.
Which was, if I haven't said it enough, like a truly inspired great company, and that's, so it's, and not to sound like a 40-some-year-old punk rocker, but it's like always sad when like
things are
something
never as good as they used to be
that was truly independent and like did not rely upon corporate money is now relying upon corporate money and like out of the soul I don't know, reason that it was sort of too big for a small independent buyer to take it on, or new leadership to move in.
The thing that bums me out about it the most is that all the money is going to the Workman's Family Foundation, which basically is just like taking all of that money out of the economy.
Right.
So they can channel it back in at a very steady trickle. And yeah, this is not like a great thing for the people.
Yeah, you really want rich people spending their money, not putting it away in a bank account. Like, that's the one thing that does not benefit the economy.
So what does this new buyout of a large independent, one of the last few large independents, mean for the publishing ecosystem in general? Like, what are your predictions, Joe Stradamus?
It will definitely create more room for cool independent publishers to do cool independent publishing, because Workman will homogenize and sterilize in ways that we don't yet know. But, you know, I mean, it's the same way where, like, Feminist Press was able to take on cooler, edgier books that Seal Press would have done once upon a time, as, like, Seal Press moved into, like, weight loss or, you know,
right.
things that, like, aren't actually, like, very... I mean, I guess they're like women's interest titles, but they're not very women's interesting.
They're not really forwarding the feminist revolution, that's for sure.
No. And so, and I suspect it'll be kind of the same, where, you know, they'll continue Workman. And, like, Workman was really good at series, you know, and so I suspect you'll see some, like, degradation in the quality of those series, because, you know, Hachette is really good at fiction and really good at, you know, that's, like, truly what they specialize in. Mm-hmm. And so I'm guessing they're doing this to strengthen their nonfiction lines, which Workman is really good at.
We were talking when the news first broke, you brought up what this actually means for Microcosm, which is that we're sold by the same independent sales reps as Workman.
I was like, I don't remember what you're talking about. But yes, yeah, you're correct. Yeah. We share all of our trade sales reps. We use the exact same groups that they do for the book trade. So everybody that sells them into bookstores sells us into bookstores as well, which, like, will severely lighten their load and allow them to have, you know, a little more bandwidth to show off some books for some other publishers, maybe ones that start with the letter M.
We have some strong books coming up. I'm hoping they can really fill that gap. I mean, no one can fill that gap, I guess, but
yeah,
we can fill a little bit of it.
I know.
And maybe they'll have the bandwidth to take on some more independent publishers also.
It is likely. I mean, that would, you know, because it's like, at the end of the day, a salesperson has to make their scratch one way or another from selling books, and so they have to have, you know, like a publisher of Workman's size, you know, they sell a lot of books, so they have...
hard to replace.
Yeah, and that's... So it is on that somber note that, you know, we tell you that it is even more important that you start your own independent publisher. Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.